So you're playing Genshin, you do a 10 pull, and while you don't get a 5-star, you do get 4-star Chevy, who might as well be a 5-star, let's be honest. Chevy is a polearm wielding pyro user who has become one of the best supports in the game for overloaded teams. And in this video, we're going to look at the basics of Chevy. Now, I feel like I just recently did a video on Chevy, but that was during her last banner, but alas, she is back on this banner. So we are going to do another video, and I am going to kind of touch a little bit more on one of the comments, the reoccurring comments that was on a lot of my TikTok videos about Chevy's kit. So let's get into it. Now, Chevy's attacks are going to be normal. She does have a little bit of a different animation. I say this in a lot of other videos, but they do physical damage. And then her charge attack is the spinning version of that. Now we're going to get into the main point of her kit, being her skill. Now her skill is going to have a tap and a hold. But first, we're going to look at the tap. Now, the tap is just going to raise up her musket, attacking the nearest enemy, doing pyro damage. If we do the hold version, it is going to let us aim at the enemy, but the hold version is very, very important because if we look at one of Chevy's passives, whenever you cause an overloaded reaction, anybody in the party, it doesn't have to be Chevy, it doesn't have to be anybody in particular. Anytime an overloaded reaction is caused, Chevy is going to get what is called an overcharged ball. Now, this overcharged ball is going to be depicted by this symbol next to Chevy. What this overcharged ball does is that whenever you use her hold skill, you have to use her hold skill. It will fire this overcharged ball and it will give your entire team an attack buff based on Chevy's max HP, maxing out at 40,000 HP for Chevy. So if you just do the tap version of the skill, it will not fire the overcharged ball. You have to hold it down to then fire the overcharged ball. This was the comment that was left on my other Chevy videos. And even today, I'm still getting some people commented on it that they've been using Chevy wrong. That is okay. You know, but you're not expected to know every single aspect of every person's kit. Some people just missed it when they were reading over it, whatever. That's why I make these videos so that way it can help people understand the kits a little bit better. So we need to make sure that we are using her hold skill to fire the overcharged ball to then get that attack buff to our entire party. And it lasts for like 30 seconds. It's a very, very long attack buff. Now, what else an overloaded reaction does with Chevy and the team is if you have only pyro and electro characters in your team, then it is going to shred resistance off of the enemy. Any enemy that's hit with an overloaded reaction, it will shred the resistance off of them for both pyro and electro. Now, the shred doesn't last as long as the attack buff, so you do kind of need to make sure that you're constantly causing overloaded reactions, but you can easily do that with some off-field elemental applying characters like Fischl, Dia, Raiden. You have a ton of different characters that can do this. Now, that's the main bulk of her kit. Her burst really doesn't do anything except for just do a couple of instances of pyro damage, and more so this burst is used to kind of just trigger an overloaded reaction to then use Chevy's skill. So for instance, if we were to use like Raiden's E and then Chevy's burst, we're going to get the overloaded reaction, get the overcharged ball, and then use her hold skill to fire off that overcharged ball. Her burst really is just an instance of pyro damage to hopefully cause an overloaded reaction to get the overcharged ball for her skill. Now, something else with her skill is that once you've used it, it is also going to heal only your on-field character. It's not going to heal your whole party, just the character that's on-field, and this healing is going to come based on Chevy's max HP. So with building her max HP, you are getting an attack buff up to 40k HP and healing. So this is a really, really good combination as a healer and a buffer and a shredder, which is what makes her such a good character in overloaded teams. And in fact, Chevy and my Hyper Raiden team outperforms my Kazuo, which is crazy, and can even outperform my Shilinen under certain circumstances. So like, it's a really, really great character to have, especially with constellations mines at C1s, because Chevy avoids me like the plague, probably because, you know, Chiori's my favorite character. Now, for artifacts for Chevy, I have mine on 4-piece Songs of Days Past. It's going to give a healing bonus, but then it's also going to give a damage bonus based on how much is healed. So this is a really, really good artifact set for Chevy. She can make full use of this artifact set. It's actually very, very good. You do have a couple of different artifact sets though that you can use if you don't want to use something like Songs of Days Past. In my opinion, it is more important to get the 40k HP over an individual artifact set. So if you need to, you can run 2-piece VG, 2-piece Tenacity to get her HP above 40k HP. But if you can get it without using 2-piece, then I would use a different set. Another artifact set that you can use if you don't have a user of this artifact set in that team is going to be Noblesse. Noblesse is going to be very, very good. It's going to give an attack buff once you've used your burst, but if you're running her with like Benny, like I do, then you can only have one Noblesse user, so that's why I use Songs of Days Past. If you want to run something like a damaged Chevy, then you can do something like Crimson Witch. You can do like a 2-piece Noblesse, 2-piece Golden Troop, or you can even run like Emblem of Severed Fates if you want her to do like burst damage. Now for the artifact set, you're most likely going to be running an HP Sands, HP Goblet, and then you could run an HP Circlet. At that point though, you might already have enough HP where you don't have to run HP across the board, but I run triple HP. You could also change that Circlet over to a healing bonus or the Sands to an energy recharge. If you're running like a DPS, then you're most likely going to be running like an attack, pyro, and then crit rate or crit damage, depending on what you need more of. Now for weapons, you do have a couple of different options, and in my opinion, this event weapon that I always call the Magical Girl Staff is Chevy's best weapon. It is very, very good. It's going to get up a ton of HP for her, but then it's also going to restore energy to somebody else, but it's also going to give her energy when she performs healing. So you can use her skill, take her off the field, and she is still going to get energy. So you can use her as a substitute battery or a partial battery to somebody else on your team if you need it. Speaking of battery, you can also use something like Favonius Lance where you're going to get a ton of energy recharge, and then doing a crit is going to create elementless energy, again kind of serving as a substitute battery. At that point though, you would want to run like a crit rate circlet so that way you can cause crits more often. You do always of course have the 3-star Black Tassel, which is going to give more HP than Dialogue of the Desert Sages, but it's going to give you less energy. Now you also do have something like Rightful Reward, which is going to give you much less HP, but it is going to do kind of like a version of Dialogue of the Desert Sages. However, Chevy has to be the one that is healed to get that energy versus the Magical Girl Staff where she causes healing on somebody else. So you are kind of getting a little bit of a trade-off, but you can use something like Rightful Reward. However, I think Black Tassel's HP is just going to be more valuable. And then, of course, if you're going to be running like damaged Chevy, you've got stuff like Staff of Homa, you got Scarlet Sands, you got Engulfing, Calamity Queller can even be pretty good, Wavebreaker, you've got Kitai Crossbeard, Dragon's Bane, the Catch. You have a ton of other options for Chevy if you wanted to run something like DPS. Chevy is a phenomenal support character for something like a Raiden hypercarry team, and that's what I use. I use Raiden C6 Sara, Chevy, and then Benny, or Raiden Dia, Chevy, Benny, and both of those teams are really good at working together, and they have a great synergy. It also frees up Kazuha to go to another team if I need him on another team, but I find myself using Kazuha less and less as the game goes on. Now, something that I do want to talk about though at this end is if you are going to be using Chevy in a team, she doesn't buff the overloaded reaction. She uses the overloaded reaction to buff her team members. So even though overloaded's damage is calculated based on level of the character and the EM, you're most likely not going to be building EM on your characters. You're still going to be doing a standard build. So like my Raiden is still a standard Raiden build with Engulfing and Emblem and ER and Electro damage and then crit rate. My Dia in that team is on VG, and she's on an HP Sands, a Pyro Goblet, and a crit damage circlet. You still build your team the same way that you normally would, not full EM. Again, she doesn't buff the overloaded reaction. She uses the overloaded reaction to buff your team and make the enemies weaker. So just keep that in mind. But that is going to be it for this video. Kuki has green hair. I have green hair in this model, and I will see you in the next one.